What's up, YouTube fam? Welcome back to part two. Part two on the bushcrafting knife. We have it back from heat treat. I'll turn the camera around, show you what we're dealing with once I straighten my specs up. And let's have a look. Boom. Right, you're back in the room. So I've taken this out to the grinder and I have gone through various grits of paper. I've ground the bevel out to the final shape. And then I've used the various grades of sandpaper on this part here to clean it up and make it nice and shiny. Well, it's not that shiny, but it's shinier than it was because it comes out of heat treat looking like this, generally. So as you can see, it's a fair difference between that and that. So basically it's just cleaning it up in the grinder and obviously reprofiling the bevel. This bevel is a Scandi grind, so it goes to a point. Okay, so that is at the point where it will cut you. Next up is the scales, or the handles, as we call them. This is just an example. I've actually done another couple, but this one had a bit of an issue. And the issue was that after I drilled the holes, for the front two pins, these two here, when I drilled this back one, something must have moved because it's off the holes are off for the back lanyard tube. So when you put the pins in the front two bits, this back one doesn't quite line up. So to resolve that, I've got two options. I could either make up another set of scales and bin these, or use them for another knife. Don't really want to use that. So my other option is to get the gas torch out, and I'm going to heat just this area. I'm going to put a cold cloth over the rest of it with soaked in water, and I'm going to heat up just this area till it goes a dull red colour, and it's basically annealing this part of the knife so that I can drill it. So if you try drilling it just now, all you'll hear is a loud screeching noise from your drill as it blunts itself in 0.0 seconds. Okay, so I'll do that, but I'm just using this one as an example. That's why it's not put together, is because it doesn't the pins don't line up. So for my scales, this is Babinga, I believe, and I stuck some red liners on it. You can see I've also put the liners on the grinder to flatten them, make sure it's flat before I line them up for the pins. For the pins, I am using brass. This is them here. And I also do is I put it in the drill bit, as you can maybe see there. The shaft is like sanded. And I use some 120 on the drill. So I put this in the drill, get some 120 grit, and turn the drill and hold that with the sandpaper on the other end. Okay. It also gives it a bit of a key for the epoxy to stick to, if you like. So once you've cut out your basic scales and glued the lining on, you don't need to use liners. I just prefer the look of it, to be honest. What you do then is you line up your holes properly, not like I did, and use a twist clamp to hold them in place, preferably something that won't move, and then you can drill the holes out. What I also do at this point is I will put them this way so that I don't have a blowout on the outside of the wood, because wood is pretty easy to blow out when you're drilling through it, and that's basically when you come through the wood, right at the very end, it'll like push out a bit of wood. So you don't want that. So what I do is I put the two bits of wood together so that your drill's going through it. And if anything's blowing out, it'll be in the inside here. It hasn't, obviously, but that's because it's G10 and it's not a fibrous product that will blow out, you know. And it'll still line up. It just means that instead of having them like this, you're having them like this, okay? So once you've done the first pinhole, get your pin, stick it through the pinholes here, and the knife, obviously. So it should be something like that, with the knife sitting down on top of this. And then you can line it up drill your second hole. As you can see, I've drilled my second hole, and as you can maybe also see, you can see where my back hole is out. That sounds a bit personal, but you know. This hole here is too low for some reason. It must have moved like this or something when I drilled it. Actually, this is upside down because it should be flipped over the other way, because I wouldn't have drilled it so that this pointed bit at the end was past the liners. So anyway, what you do is you drill all your holes. Once you get them all lined up and checked and double checked and triple checked, then take it apart. What I do is I get a carbide scribe, which is basically, it's like a pencil, but it's got a carbide tip in it. And what I'll do is I'll scratch up the insides of all these. Some people drill little dimple holes in them, but I'm not so keen on that. But if you are going to drill dimple holes in it, what to do is to put your knife on top of it and then trace around your knife, with a pen, so that you don't put any of the dimple holes at the edge where you'll see it. This knife's drilled with additional holes anyway for the adhesive to go from both sides, but I still like to scratch this up and give it a bit of a key, you know. So once you've done that, and once you've cut your pins to size, and what I usually do is I'll put the two scales and the knife on top, and then that gives you an idea how high to go with your pins. And that's about how high I go with them. You know, it doesn't need to be sticking out by miles. And if it is sticking out by miles, it's just going to create more heat when you grind them down. So this will probably just stick out maybe about that much where my nail is. Okay, same with the pins. Cut them all the same size. Then what I tend to do is I'll fit the handle to the knife dry like that, and then I'll mark a line here, or I'll put the pins in and just leave them, and then I'll get some masking tape and I'll mask up just past the edge here, just past this edge, so there's maybe, I don't know, half a millimetre or something, but you don't want them butted up. You'll also notice that I put a 45-degree angle on this, and that is because once it's fixed, you can't really shape it afterwards without wrecking the blade. So I put a 45-degree on it. It's almost down to the liner, but not quite. You can see the liner, and then it's about the same width as the liner before it starts going down at 45 degrees. And like I say, what you want to do is you want to finish up this edge before you epoxy it. So you get your various sandpapers, work your way through them, and then this is effectively finished, okay? Then what you do is you mix up your epoxy. I usually lay the stuff out like this, so that nearest to me is the first one. So what I'll do is I'll cover this in epoxy, then I'll put some epoxy in the pins and poke them through from the underneath so that they're sticking out. Let me just demonstrate. I'll get my pin, stick epoxy on it obviously, and then once it's sticking through like so, same with the other and same with the lanyard, then this is all covered in epoxy obviously. Your pins have got epoxy obviously, and then just sit the knife down on top of it. Again, it would be the other way, but you know. And then epoxy the knife itself and up to the line where your tape will be, which is about here. And then stick the other bit on top, and then clamp them together and leave them overnight. Now, what will happen once you've done that, here's one I made earlier, is you'll end up with a big blocky block like that. Okay, leave it 24 hours to set the epoxy off properly, and then you're ready to trim all this wood back to where the knife handle is. So what you're effectively doing is removing the excess around the edge until you get to just shy of the metal of the knife, yeah? Some people actually take some of this out. Like when they get to this stage, what they'll do is they'll draw a pen around the knife, pen mark around the knife, and then take this off, and then trim down the scales to the line, or just past the line, so that there's less to trim once it's glued up. And that's as good a way to do it as any, I guess. I'll have more to grind off with this one, and that there you can see just how much I've left sticking out. It's not a huge amount, less on that side slightly. And when you're grinding, because this is solid brass, it's a heat soak. So what you want to do is basically just touch it on your grinder, keep it cool, because the heat will melt the epoxy and won't be stuck to the knife. Okay, so just do a little bit at a time, and you can even dunk it in water, because by this stage it's water resistant, you know. And then just keep going until you get it down flat. This is all flat, and then you can start shaping it. Okay, so we'll presume that this is all flat, just for the sake of me telling you what we're doing next. Okay, so we just presume that this is all flattened out now, and it's I've cut it all around so that it's the shape of the knife, basically. I don't have another one here. Well, I'll do kind of, but you know, we'll use this as an example. So once you've got it to this stage, obviously it'll still be a block in the sides. You know, it won't be shaped or anything, but the outside part will be shaped to the steel. Okay. So once you've got it to that stage, then you can start working on shaping the handle. What I'm going to do with this one is it's called a Coke bottle shape. And what it involves is, when you look down the knife like this, kind of looks like a Coke bottle. So what I'll be doing is, once I've got it all cut around the knife, is put my hand on the knife where it would normally sit, and then between my second and third finger, I'll mark a line. Okay, so that'll be roughly the middle of the handle, and then I'll transfer the line onto the top here. And what I'll do is, from the edge here, I will take that line down towards this point here where my finger is. Not quite at the end of the wood, but nearly at the end of the wood. Yeah, so it'll go from there diagonally across. In fact, it'll probably stop short of the centre. Like, let me just show you. I'll get a pencil. There's a pencil there. So just say that line there's the centre. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll probably take it from about here. Yeah, so that's the centre line that I mentioned when you put your hand on it. I'll take it from this point here down to this point here diagonally. I'll do the same on this side. Take it from about here to the edge. Okay, so then you'll have a flat edge, and then it'll be a diagonal grind down towards the peak. When you're grinding, be very careful you don't hit the blade. And then, like, if that's the centre line, like I mentioned, what I'll do is I'll take an equal distance behind it to about here, maybe slightly more, and then obviously the knife ends here, but it will do once it's all cut. And then what I'll do is I'll take a radius in here, like so. So it's a slight curve, something like that, a half moon sort of shape. Okay, and I'll probably take it into about halfway probably. So it'll go something like that. Yeah, and then down there. And what you can use for this is your either your top wheel and your platen, or a small wheel attachment. It's up to yourself. Or if you've got a contact wheel that fits the radius, that fits that radius there, use that. That's the easiest method. I've just bought a contact wheel. I'm not sure if the radius will fit or not, but I'd like to give it a shot. So what I'll do is I'll come back once I've cut all this out and done a bit of the grinding, and then I'll show you how we finish off the sides, the corners, the top and bottom, and the knife in general. Okay, so that'll do for now. I'll come back, like I say, once I've done some grinding. What a work of art. Counterboard and all sorts. Just need to cut these screws off. And I've got a threaded bar go through here on a spring so that you can adjust how far out this comes. I'll maybe put another block on here. Right, we're out at the grinder. I'm running a 80 grit, I believe it is, belt in there. But what I do first is, you can see here I've lightly marked out roughly where the steel blade is. So what I'll do is I'll use my grinder with a new blade so that I can get right the way through it all and take off large chunks of this, because otherwise you'll just clog up your belts. You'll just clog up your belts with oily wood. And once I've taken the major part out, I should be left with just a little bit to grind. And once I've ground it, you'll see here, that's what we end up with. I haven't done the underside of this one yet, but this is just the rough grind. Like I say, you probably could leave it just shy of the steel and then use your higher grit belts to kind of polish it up a bit. But I guess you can always use your higher grit belts to polish it up anyway. As you can see, I've ground through the tape here, but that's not a problem, because when we get to the higher grit belts, I'll just take this right along the edge and clean it all up nicely. I flattened out this part at the front to the ricasso area, and then obviously this goes in, up, down, up, and I'll do that shortly. But what I'll do to do that is I'll use a small wheel attachment, and it'll get in there nicely. If I try using this, you can use it for like grinding in at an angle like this, and you get so far, but you will eventually hit the steel. Same with this side, you can go in so far, you'll hit the steel. So I might do that, or I might just do it all on the small wheel. I've not decided yet. But what I will do first is we'll get this one up to the same level. So I'm going to get the grinder out, and you can see there's like a good flipping 15mm of wood. You wouldn't want to be grinding through that, or your belt would just clog to death. I mean, you can see already it's starting to fill up. So the belts don't last very well when you're doing hardwoods, because there's so much oil in the wood that it just clogs your belt, which is why I like to get as much of it off as I can with the grinder. So I'll just do that. I'm back in the dust. What I did was, I haven't put the small wheel attachment on yet. I ground this out on the edge of the belt here, like so. Took it in from both ends for a start, like so. You know, steering just clear of the steel as much as I could. I've obviously touched it a few times. 1, 2, yeah, I've touched it a few times, but anyway, that won't matter because we're still to tidy up the edge anyway. So then I've gone on to once I've done both of these indent parts, then just work in the middle like so until you get it virtually down to the steel as I have. And what I'll do next is I'll put my small wheels on, and I'll get into these little curvature parts here, and I'll also run it along here, along the middle between both ends, and that'll give me a nice smooth transition. I'll lower the speed of the grinder down slightly, because you don't want it, if it goes too fast it just burns wood. But you can see all the mess from the wood. It's not without leaving a bloody mess all over the place, but you know, it has to be done. So and I can also sweep it up. So I'll crack on. I've also done the red one. You probably guessed with the state of the walls. To a similar level. And like I say, we'll put the small belt on, the small wheel on, should I say, and we'll take these out. I caught the side with the grinder here when I was grinding off the pins. So what I'll do is I'll flatten down both sides to the same amount, It's barely anything, to be honest. You can't even see it in the top, but you know, because that might be a part that you'll see, what I'll do is I'll grind both sides down. So I'll get small wheels on. Right, I've used a small wheel attachment. This one here, it's actually the biggest of the small wheels that I have, and it fits fine in this corner. And I'm giving it a grind with that, with the 80 grit paper. And now I'm moving up to the, I think it's 180, possibly 240, something round about that. And I'll use it again to make this steel a bit smoother. Like I say, it reduces speed and just go slowly, and you'll get a nice shine on it. The higher up the grits you go. That's not symmetrical there, you'll see. This left hand side needs a bit more of it. But we can come to that at a later date. What I'm concentrating on just now is getting this steel nice and polished up, sweet. I'll worry about the outside. I'm just doing the insides of these two knives, and the only reason I'm doing that is because it saves me doing it later whilst I've got the grinder out. So I'll get that one done. This one looks a bit squarer at the ends, and again you can see the little on the steel, it's not that shiny if you like, but it will be by the time I finish. So I'll use this belt, and that'll tidy it up a bit, and like I say, reduce the speed on the grinder. I'll reduce it down to about usually go at 400. I'll go about 150 hertz. 600's flat out, so it's about quarter power, I'd say. Right, so I've taken the small wheel down the middle, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up that steel's a lot less rough than it was 2 minutes ago. So what I'll do now is I'll take these knives inside, and like I say, now that I've got the outline done, I can mark between my fingers, this one and this one, and that'll determine the centre of the handle. And then, like I say, I'll shape it up, and I'll show you once that's all drawn up in pencil. And then we'll come out and we'll grind it on here. Right, we're at the critical stage now. We've outlined our knife, basically. Cleaned up the inside nicely. You can see it's kind of even there by the equilateral triangles on the end. The back's kind of straight as well. I straightened this one up slightly. Looks a bit better. It still needs a bit more off the left hand side, but it looks a bit better. I didn't want to take too much off, you know. And cleaned up the inside of this one. So this, like I say, this bit's critical, because if the knife doesn't feel good in your hand, then it's not going to be any good to MD, and you're not going to want to use it. So what I did was, as you can see, I've marked the centre between my two fingers, between these two fingers. That pencil line is the centre line. That one there. Let me just get a pencil. So that's your centre line. I've moved forward about 10 mil and back about 12 mil. Looks a lot more than 12 mil, but it actually is. Let's just check. Maybe it is more than 12 mil. No, it's about 12 mil. So that's where I'm going to start the radius. I'll show you the top, it's easier. There you can see my semicircular mark goes from the point there just to the back of the flat, just where it starts to turn down on this angle. Same in this side, from the same point, same distance in for both sides, and ending in the same bit. You really have to make sure these are like equal. You know, you don't want one with just a little scallop and one with a big one coming out. It would just look hideous. And like I say, how it feels in the hand will determine whether the person's going to use it or not. At the front here, you can see that I've drawn an angle like that. And I've taken it from, focus damn it, just above the point here. About the equilateral distance between here and the point up is where it'll start. And I've done the same on this side. I'll stick it up against the light, see if it shows up better. Marginally. You can see there both sides are the same, eh? With the back you can't really tell because it's not picking up very well, but they are, trust me. And I've also done the same in this one. You can see the pencil mark there. Where did it go? It was there a minute ago. I can see the pencil mark on the other side. It's the same idea. All I did was transfer the dimensions from this knife onto the other one by simply putting it up towards it and just transferring them over. The black handle's marginally shorter, but we're talking flipping a couple of millimeters. So you can see where I've just transferred the lines across, and you can see the semicircles at the back of the darker knife handle. And can you see the diagonals at the front? Well, yes. So that's what we're aiming for. I don't mark the bottoms, there's no point. I just judge it by the side. And you can judge it from the front as well when you're doing this, that your angle's the same all the way down here. So that's what I'll do next. I will go out to the garage, get the grinder fired up, puts on some 80 grit, and I'll start sanding down this edge here. Like I say, when you do this, be very careful of the blade. You do not want the grinder going into the blade, the sandpaper going into the blade at all. That would be an absolute total disaster. So you can either do it on the platen with the work rest, like so that your belt's coming down this way and you're avoiding the blade altogether. But personally speaking, I prefer to do it like if this was a platen sitting up like that, I prefer to do it that way, and I just be very careful that I don't hit this. So I'll go and do that. I'll grind in some of these fronts first, then I'll show you how we do the backs, because I need like a radius, either the wheel, the top wheel of the platen, possibly, small wheel attachment, possibly. It depends what the radius is. I'll find something, one of the wheels that will match the curve. Yep, that's what you need. I've also got a contact wheel. I'm waiting for a spacer to arrive. I would quite like to use it, just to see if it's suitable or not, but I suspect it's going to be too big for these, to be honest, because it's a 200mm radius one, so it would just be skiffing bits off the edge. But we'll go out in the garage and I'll show you. Okay, so that's the first part done, the fronts, as you can see. Hard to pick up, but I've kind of stopped. I've stopped it on the line, then I've slightly curved it round just onto the flat there. This one here is a more abrupt stop, but I will eventually blend that all in to this part here. So as you can see, it's equal on both sides. Check it at the front. Both sides are the same with this one. Check it at the front again. They're equidistant, which is good. So now the next part of the equation is to get the curve on here. I'm looking at this wheel here. I didn't really want to use the contact wheel, but I think it's the closest to the dimension that we need. It's I'll turn it on its side and show you. Okay, so we've used the wheel. It's not an exact match for the curve, but it's close enough. And all we've done is worked it back and forward like that until we've got the shape that we want. If you look down there, you can see it's the same on both sides. Pretty much. Maybe the left side needs to come in a little bit, but we can sort that out when we start coming over the corners. So that's the basic shape of that one done, and I've also done the other one too. It is not quite as far forward, but already it feels good in the hand. I'll maybe take these blend these a little bit in, a bit further up here, into the flats, and you can see there's still a flat there, angle here, curve here. So that's my plan, is to just blend it in a little bit nicer. The left hand one obviously needs a bit more off at the top as well here, this edge, so I'll sort that out as well while I'm at it.